Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my library. So today I'm here to bring you the first 2 weeks of my April wrap up. So as of right now I have finished 3 books. I'm almost finished another 2. So I'm really happy with where I am at the moment. I think this is going to be a really strong month for me because I have a lot of time off. I'm not working as much as I usually do. So I'm just really enjoying the time that I have to be able to read. So let's just get right into it. The first 3 books that I have finished so far this month. The first one being The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This one was so good. Like, I loved this so much. I think it was the fact that it was like an adult romance and it had like small town love and it was in Alaska, and I just felt like I really connected with this story and it was very enjoyable for me to read. So in this novel we follow Callie, who lives in Toronto with her mother. Her father and her mother have split up and they have quite a long time ago, and she gets a call at the start of the novel telling her that her father has been diagnosed with cancer and that this may be her only time to have a relationship with her. So she hasn't really seen her father since she left Alaska. They don't have a very good relationship. They almost never talk. They haven't spoken in many years. And this is her chance to go and see who her father is and what kind of person he was and really get to know him before time runs out. So she gets on a flight to this small town in Alaska who is like almost completely off grid. Her father is a charter pilot for a company that has been running in the family for years. And when she gets there, she meets this man named Jonah, who is another pilot in the company, and I have to say he is like your typical brooding, muscly male. And basically throughout the story she's just trying to create a relationship with her father to see what kind of person he really was. And I felt like this was really a heartwarming story. At the same time as her trying to find that relationship with her father, she's also having to deal with Jonah, who is very abrupt and blunt towards her and has no sympathy for her at all, really. And I just really loved the dynamics within this novel. I think that K.A. Tucker does a great job with her character relationships. I feel like that was just something that I really enjoyed from her. And the romance was just so good. I absolutely loved the romance. I think because it was a small town and like she was a little bit out of her comfort zone and she needed a little bit of help, and he was always there but he was reluctant towards it. I was just like, oh, this was such a good novel for me. I loved it so much and I'm really excited to read the second one. And then the second book I read for the month was Hating You, Dating You by Christina Lauren. Now this one wasn't one of my favorites from them. I feel like the title didn't really match the actual storyline. Hating You, Dating You follows Evie and Carter, who are both singles and are both Hollywood agents. They work for different companies and they meet through a mutual friend at a Halloween party and they really hit it off. And then the next Monday they find out that their 2 companies are merging together and they're going to be working beside each other, and they don't really like mixing relationships with their work. So they've decided that they weren't going to go anywhere and they were just going to leave it as how it is until their boss basically tells them that they're rivals and only one of them is going to be there at the end of the 6 months and that they have to basically fight each other for their job. So I think a lot of the hating you part of it comes into it there. It wasn't so much hate though, it was more like a tiny little bit of sabotage. Like they just did like little pranks on each other. So they always had that want to be with the other person. They just never got to do that because of their jobs. And then in the end there was a huge plot twist that I didn't really see coming at all, and I really liked that. I don't remember so much of the relationship to themselves. I don't think anything really stood out to me. It was just like a nice quick read and I enjoyed it. And then the third book I read was Say You Still Love Me by K.A. Tucker. That one was probably my least favourite for the month so far. I felt like because this one had the alternate chapters where one was the future and one was the present and one was the past, that everything really dragged on. Like, I didn't really get any answers to the questions I had between the start of the book and like almost towards the end. Only things started to come together towards the end, and it just kind of made the pacing off. It really made it slow for me, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. While I did like the relationship that the two of them had in the past. So this novel follows Piper, who is in the past going to a summer camp as a counsellor for the first time, and then she meets there she meets Kyle, who is a counsellor who has been there a few times. Basically they just fall in love with each other and have this wild summer romance. And then you go to the present, where she is someone very high in her father's company, and she's basically getting ready to take over for her father. And randomly Kyle comes in as a bodyguard? No, as security for the building that she works in. And it kind of throws her off kilter a little bit, because Kyle is someone who she had this huge summer romance for and was her first love, and she feels like she's still not really over that, and he pretends he doesn't remember her the first time they meet. So I did enjoy the flashbacks and going back to see how their romance started, but I felt like the present relationship they had was just not as good. It was more of a, he secretly tried to be an employee as a security guard for her company for a really long time. He finally got there, and then, like, I don't even know, he like chickened out and pretended he didn't remember her, and then kept telling her that he wasn't in the same league as she was and he didn't deserve to be with her. And he was like very, for someone who was supposed to be like this happy, free spirited person in the past, it just didn't work for me. His character in the present didn't work for me, and I don't know what it was. It was just like, it was just really weird, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And yeah, other than the actual plot of you finding out how their relationship came to be in the past, there wasn't really much of a plot for the present. And it was basically, there wasn't a lot of chemistry between them, I felt, within the present. He was a lot of hot and cold, like he wanted to be with her, then he didn't want to be with her, and I just wasn't a fan of it as much as I wanted to be. So those are my thoughts on those 3 books. I am currently reading The Beholder by Anna Bright and The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. I think I just butchered that, but I think that's how you pronounce it. So I will give you my thoughts on those when I finish them. Hopefully I will have finished them by the end of the week. I almost definitely will. Hopefully I can finish them by tomorrow, and I'll give you a quick wrap up on those. Otherwise, I will see you in a little bit. So it is now the 18th of April. This year has gone so fast. So it is the 18th of April, and I'm here to bring you the books that I have read so far this week. I finished 2 books this week, which isn't as great as the last couple of weeks have been, but I just needed a break. I feel like I did so much reading and so much work that I didn't have much downtime. So while reading is still downtime for me, I just needed to do something else. So I finished 2 books. The first one was The Beholder by Anna Bright. In this one we are following, I can never pronounce her name, Sela? And she is the daughter of the Seneschal of Prodamac. And basically she is come of age now and is expected to find a husband. She decides to propose to one of her childhood friends who she's known her whole life, and he very publicly denies it. And it's a little bit embarrassing for her, but then her stepmother comes in and says her father is ill, she still needs to find someone to marry to take over the throne. So they send her away and tell her not to come back until she finds a perfect suitor that they have, one of the perfect suitors that they have given her an option for. So at the start she has 4 to choose from, and she quickly realizes that they are all first in line for the throne in their countries. So if she were to marry any of them, they would not be able to come back to her country and rule. She would have to stay with them. So I think she's kind of understanding that her stepmother is just trying to push her out of the family, and is trying to basically take over the country while she's still trying to find a husband. I did enjoy this one. I rated it 3 stars. It was entertaining, it was enjoyable. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot of like pirate things, and I expected a lot of things to happen that didn't happen. When I first started reading this book, I thought that she would fall in love with the captain of the boat, of the ship, and that didn't happen. So basically she goes to the first country and finds out that the person that she is supposed to be courting with is like a 40-year-old prince, and she finds it a little bit awkward and uncomfortable and develops this relationship with her bodyguard. And right towards the end, where she's been there for 2 weeks and she has to accept a proposal, she finds out that the prince was actually the bodyguard in disguise, and that they wanted to make sure that the love and the feelings that she had were genuine and not just to get the throne. So she gets a little pissed off and denies his proposal because he's just lied to her the entire time, and sets off onto the second suitor. I was really rooting for her and the first prince, and when we got to the second one I was like, I'm not gonna enjoy this, like this isn't what I want. And then I was genuinely surprised by how good the relationships were. Like the princess and her relationships with them were just so good, and it just made me a little bit swoony. And I was definitely rooting for her and the second guy at the end, but I assumed that that wasn't going to happen because there wasn't enough pages for there to be a happy ending, and it didn't feel like the story was finished. And then when I got to the end I realised that this is just the first book in a series and it's not a standalone novel, so I have to read the second one to find out what happens. I did read this one because it is one of my book subscription books, and I have a goal this year to read all of them before the end of the year, so that's why I read this one, not knowing that it was a series. And the second book I read this week was The Love Interest by Cale Dettridge. I rated this one 2 stars. So the thing that annoys me the most is that I really loved the premise of this. There was basically this sci-fi-esque novel where the 2 main male characters are brought up in this institution where they are put in as love interests into the world. So they've been selected a person that they have to try and make fall in love with them, and there's a good one and a bad one. So you grow up learning the characteristics and the things that you need to do to fit into that character. And so there's like the good ones and then the bad ones, and is it Dale? Caden. And Caden is the good guy, and you see from his perspective for most of the story, and Dylan is the bad guy. And I thought that the premise was so good, and I also was pitched this as the 2 love interests falling in love with each other, and I was like all for it. I was like, yes, this is going to be great. And it started off so well. It was very promising to begin with, and then once we were introduced to the main female protagonist, Juliet, everything kind of went downhill. The characters weren't being true to themselves. I found that they were changing, and Caden definitely was like that. His mindset was very different than what I wanted it to be. Like it just changed into a way that I didn't expect it to. And I think that the thing that let this novel down the most is the dialogue and just the writing style in general. I'm not sure if this was pitched for a younger audience than myself. It is still a YA novel, but it just, instead of showing you through the words of what's happening, it was telling me what was happening, and that kind of started to annoy me. And it wouldn't just tell you once, it would tell you multiple times within like reoccurring paragraphs, and it was like the author thought I was dumb and couldn't decipher what was happening without them literally telling me multiple times what was going on. And then Juliet's character in the dialogue was just so cringy. It was like she felt very robotic and not human and not genuine at all. I didn't feel like I believed her character. She would just say things that no 17-year-old would ever say. And I kind of wish that I had read this physically and annotated those so that I could literally point out what bits like I didn't enjoy. It just didn't sit well with me. And then the main issue I had with this was that, yes, it was correct in saying that the two boys did fall in love with each other, but that's another thing I didn't mention. Whoever the main protagonist picks, the other person dies. So like they only need one person to get the information from the main character or from the female character. So whoever she picks, the other one dies. So the whole time that they were having this relationship, the two boys were having this relationship and forming a bond, it was in the back of their mind that one of them was going to die if they weren't picked. So it kind of hindered how much Caden tried to win the girl, because he was falling in love with Dylan and didn't want him to die. And then Dylan very much showed that he felt the same way. And then at the end of the novel, Dylan just randomly said that he was just kidding, and like he lied to Caden the whole time to get him to fall in love with him so that Dylan could win the girl and that Caden could die. And I was just like, I was not here for that. Like, for there to be that representation in a novel and for it to be dealt with like that, I just didn't agree with it at all. And it really turned me the wrong way. And I am going to tell you what happened at the end. So if you don't want to know what happens, feel free to just like skip to the next. I just need to rant about it and I need to talk about this. So the end of the novel, Dylan and Caden end up together. There is no conversation about Dylan lying to him, saying that he was trying to win the girl and just leading him on. And Dylan just randomly comes up and kisses him one day, and then in the middle of a fight, and then they were like, yeah, okay, cool, so he does like me. He didn't lie. He was just scared about his feelings. Like, no, that's not how you do it. And there was like literally no conversation. And then the epilogue is them living happily ever after together in the middle of nowhere. And I'm just like, how could you be so betrayed by someone that was literally trying to fool you so you would die, and then be like, oh yeah, he kissed me though, he must like me again, it's totally fine? No, it's not fine. I don't agree with that. So I didn't like this book, if you couldn't tell. Oh dear. Alright, that's all I have for you today. I will update you at the end of the month. So it is that time of week again where I talk about the books that I have read for the last week. Oh, there's hair on me. So this week I have managed to finish 3 books. Look at me go. I have already read 8 books this month. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit in another book within the next 3 days, but I'm gonna give it a go. I do want to read, I know what I want to read next, so it's just a matter of me getting there. So the first book I finished this week is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. Holy crap. I freaking loved this book. I did listen to it on audiobook. There was a new narrator, so everything that I wanted was in this book. I did like how there was 2 narrators for each point of view that we receive. This book is a godsend. I can't get over how much I freaking loved this book. I love Lila, I love Kel, I love freaking Rye, I love everyone. So, I'm not going to talk about too much of the things that went on in this book because it is the second book in the series, but I'm assuming by now a lot of people have already read this and I'm probably the last one to the party. But this one follows Lila at the start of the novel, where she is basically a pirate now, and I live for that, and I love her character so much. It just makes me so warm inside and it just makes me so happy. And I really enjoyed Kel's point of view this time too. I think that the way that him and Rai have been connected and the demons that they're both trying to face because of that outcome is very well explained. I love Victoria so much. This book was so freaking good, and it left in that place where I was just like, I have no idea where it's gonna go for the last book, and I'm so excited to see how this one ends. And I'm probably gonna cry. The second book I finished this week is Spell Hacker by M.K. England. I believe I rated this one 3 stars. It didn't hold up to the same platform that I have The Disasters on. So The Disasters is her first novel, I believe. It was her debut, and that one was so bloody good. It was just, that was really Australian of me. Oh my goodness. It was just like everything that I wanted. This one had a lot of those things in it, but it just wasn't, I think the humor wasn't there as much as I wanted, and that's something that really makes me enjoy a book. So in this novel we are following Diz and 4 of her friends who are basically trying to illegally siphon some magic that the world produces. Basically there's this big corporation that tries to help everyone and keep them safe, because if you ingest a certain type of Maz, then you can get really sick from it, and basically you end up dying from that sickness. And there's this big corporation that basically is put on this performance to say that they're trying to save everyone and they're doing everything that they can to help everyone. And because Maz is so expensive and this is just this one company that can siphon it and put it out into the world, is basically there are people who do illegal things, like Diz and her group, who siphon it illegally and sell it off to other people. And basically they've all decided that they're about to graduate, they're about to leave and move towns and split up basically and move on with their lives, and this is going to be their last ever gig that they're going to do together, and things don't go as planned. So basically everything that can go wrong does go wrong. I did enjoy the aspect of having someone who has like a chronic illness. Even though it was like a made-up one, it was still something that was very relevant and something very important that I found in this novel. There is now don't want to get this wrong, it's either non-binary or a gender fluid person. I don't know which one it is, so I do apologize if I have offended anyone in that sense, but there is someone who their pronouns are they and them, and I really enjoyed having that representation within this novel. It was done so well, and it just went into place. It just slotted in there really nicely. I did like this book, I just didn't love it. And the last book I read for the week is The Toll by Neil Schusterman. The Toll is the concluding novel in the Scythe series, and boy was it a wild ride. Citra and Rowan are probably, they have to be up there with one of my favourite characters and my favourite dynamic duo, and it's just like everything that I want. And I'm not going to say too much again about what happens in this novel because it is the concluding novel and there are going to be a lot of spoilers and things like that if I do mention things that have happened, but the way that this book ended, I cried. And I'm still trying to figure out if it was a good cry or a bad cry. I rated this one 5 stars. I think that the overall novel was really strong. I just remember this one scene where Scythe Goddard has been told that if he wants to put people in their place and make them do what he wants to do, he should build a wall around that state that's not cooperating. And he's like, I'm not an idiot. Idiots build walls. And I'm like, I see you, Neil Schusterman, I see you. And I was just like, that one made me happy. Well, the way that the story played out in the different timelines was very interesting to me, and I think that at the start it was a little bit confusing because I did read it on an audiobook and it didn't specify when we were going back and forth within the novel, but I soon figured it out. It wasn't that difficult, and it was such a great ending to this novel, and I just don't think that having it end another way would have worked as well as this one did. And I'm just so happy that like all these intricate little parts kind of just like throughout the novel weaved themselves into the end, and they all just came together so perfectly. And I love this novel. So I don't even know how to express how I feel, because I just have so many feelings about it, and what a good book. What a good book. Damn. Now Schusterman has this way of just like putting all of these mind-blowing concepts that you don't think would work together, and just like they just work. And I don't know how he does it, but I bow down to him. He is like a god to me. He is so good. Those are the 3 books that I've read this week. I don't know if I'm going to finish another one before the end of the week, but if I do, you'll see it in like 2.5 seconds. I bet you thought you saw the end of me. But no, I managed to finish another book. The last book I read for the month of March was Racing the Sun by Karina Hall. And I have a few things to say about this book. Let's just start there. So this is a romance novel, and I just saw it on Scribd and I was like, I feel in the mood for like something lovey, which usually happens at the start of every month, so fitting that it was the last day of the month. In this novel we are following Amber, who is basically an American traveling the world trying to find her passion, or try and find something that she feels is missing in her life. And she's come to the point where she's basically travelled Asia, Australia and Europe, and she's in Italy and she's run out of money. That's where the novel begins. She basically doesn't have any money and she can't even afford a plane ticket home. She decides that she's going to stay in this small town in Italy and work until she can afford to pay for her ticket to come home. Amber ends up finding a job as a English teacher to 2 young students. So basically she's just teaching them how to speak English properly. Unfortunately, these 2 young children have lost their parents and are under the care of their older brother, who doesn't seem to want to have a lot to do with them. Unfortunately, he's dealing with his own issues, and this novel is quite dark compared to what I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be like a little breezy, light contemporary, but it did hit on some hard topics, which I felt like that was very interesting. So the romance is between Amber and the older brother, Desi. So basically what happens in this novel is Amber travels to this small island where Desi lives and has agreed to take on the position and stay at the house to teach the children English. Over this time, Desi is very guarded and quiet and a little bit of a drunk. And he just basically sits in his library and doesn't interact with anyone and doesn't really do anything. He just sits in his library and drinks. And he's obviously quite depressed and upset, and she doesn't really know what to do about it. And because he's her boss, she doesn't know where the boundaries lie. The thing that I didn't like about this novel is that they have a housekeeper, or like a nanny, at the start of the book, and then she and Desi get into an argument and she quits and she leaves, and basically Desi's like, well, you're the only person that I have at the moment, so can you please take over as nanny until I find someone to fill the position. She agrees, she's happy to do that. At this point in time, there's like a little bit of a relationship between them. There's a lot of sexual tension and things like that, but they haven't actually done anything about it. And then their relationship does grow and become more serious, and the thing that annoyed me the most is that I felt like this author needed something to go wrong for there to be a resolution. And I feel like the arguments and the fight that they had in order for them to break up, for them to get back together, was just like come out of thin air. So basically Desi used to be a motorcycle racer and was in an accident just after a year after his parents died, and realized that if he were to die in an accident, he would leave his siblings as orphans and have no one to look after them. So he decides to quit racing and focus on looking after them, and so that they have someone there for them. Towards the end of the novel, Desi has opened up about himself. He has started to conquer his own fears and really become more involved in the children's lives. And he feels like it's time for him to get back into the racing and to get back into something that he loves. And Amber is all for it at the beginning, But when he starts traveling a little bit to practice and things like that, and to just do competitions, her entire character changes, and it's almost out of nowhere. There's just this scene where she's talking to this girl who works at a bar about how mad she is that he's left her with his siblings, like his brother and sister, and she's complaining like she's not their mother, it's not her job to be looking after them, she didn't even want to look after them in the first place, she's just doing it for him. And like she acted like she had no regard about these children whatsoever, where at the start she tried so hard to have that acceptance from them. And I just felt like she seemed so selfish in that moment, and she was complaining that she'd given up all of her passions and all of her dreams to be stuck at home all day looking after children that she didn't even want. And there is no mention whatsoever in this book about her passions or her dreams. She's literally running away from her life in America, and now she's complaining about having to stay at home with a job and a super hot Italian boyfriend. Like, it just seemed just so out of character for her. And then so she gets really mad and breaks up with him without any conversation whatsoever. So like, she never talked about being mad at him or like not wanting to do it. There was never any open communication. She just got mad and left. And then he went into a race and had an accident, and then she comes running back because she thinks that he's dead or something. And it was just like, I rated this book 2 stars. I didn't love it. There was a lot of things wrong with it, and I don't feel like the characters were realistic, and they didn't keep their motives. They just weren't consistent throughout the novel, and that really annoyed me. So those are my thoughts on that book, and that was the last book I read in March. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps out with the algorithm, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.